Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Be Well Texas Recovery Support Services ECHO. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Kato, and I will be helping the team facilitate today's session. Before we get started, please note that we are recording these sessions for later distribution. Please know that anything listed in the chat does not appear in the recording. These sessions are enabled for live closed captioning. If you would like to view closed captioning for this session, please navigate to the bottom of your Zoom window and select the Show Captions option. You may need to click on the three dots or More menu at the bottom right corner of your Zoom screen to find this option. If you are having trouble accessing captions, please chat Karen. To help us with attendance, please enter your name, affiliation, and email into the chat function. To access the chat feature, click on the speech bubble icon on navigation bar at the bottom of your window. And to all the Be Well Texas providers, please make sure that you identify yourselves during this session, or if you are joining by phone, please email your phone number and name to bewelltexas@utesca.edu. Karen will put this email into the chat. We appreciate your support in helping us fully capture this on record. We love to see everyone's beautiful faces, so if you are comfortable and able, we encourage you to join by video, especially for the discussion portion of our sessions. We encourage everyone to speak, but ask that you stay muted unless you're speaking. You can also use the chat feature to raise questions and share comments. We want to hear from as many of you as possible, so please keep your comments brief to allow time for others to speak up. Please note that no protected health information is allowed in either the chat or our discussions. That includes sharing names, exact dates, or medical information in a way where someone can identify a person. And during and after the session, our wonderful ECHO IT support, Karen, will send out a link to an evaluation of the session. All participants filling out the survey will be automatically entered into a raffle for a $30 Walmart gift card. Our didactic today is on Advocacy is a team sport by Mary. And following that, we will discuss a case from Cole. We will start with introductions, followed by didactics, announcements, the case presentation, and open discussion. Thank you again for joining us today. These sessions are what we make of them. We encourage all of you to share your perspectives in today's conversation. And in the spirit of all teach, all learn, we encourage you to share your experiences, questions, and insights in today's conversation. And with that, we'll do introductions. Richard?
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Glad you're here. Richard Hamner. I'm a person in long-term recovery and a recovery sports program manager here at Be Well Texas and hub member. Welcome.
Thank you, Richard. Sean?
Hello, everyone. Great to see you here. Sean Wright, a recovery support peer specialist based out of Abilene, and also program director for the RSS program at Abilene Recovery Council and member of the hub.
And is Joseph on?
I am. Good.
Okay, so Joseph.
Good afternoon, everyone. Joseph Sanchez here. Pronouns he, him. I am a subject matter expert on peer recovery support services. And the Chief Program Officer with Faces and Voices of Recovery and the hub member.
Thank you, Joseph. And then Andrea.
Hello, everyone. My name is Andrea Heller, and I'm one of the program coordinators here at CSTAP. Welcome, everybody.
Jasmine?
Hi, everyone. My name is Jasmine Vidal. I'm a CSTAP program coordinator. Thank you for joining us today.
Mary.
Good. Hello, everyone. I was going to say good morning. It's morning here where I am. Hello. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Mary Jadwisiak. I am in long-term recovery from alcoholism and mental health, PTSD, and assorted other things. And I'm with Holding the Hope, and I'm your speaker today.
Thank you, Mary. And then Cole.
Hey, sorry. My name's Cole Watts. I'm a social worker. I'm a person in long-term recovery myself. I'm with Stages of Recovery, and I'll be presenting a case study in the latter section.
Thank you, Cole. With that, let's get started with our didactics. Mary, whenever you're ready, please take it away.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Again, thank you for having me, everyone. My name is Mary Jadwisiak, and I live here in Battleground, Washington. So there we go. So I just want to thank you so much for having me. And this, what we're talking about here is a very abbreviated version of about a 3 or 4 hour workshop that I did. So I'm going to talk really fast and try to just cover the high points for you. I really feel that so much in recovery and in advocacy, sometimes we can feel really alone and it can be intimidating. And what I've discovered over the years of being an advocate, I don't know, 25 or some odd years, but it was counting, is that it's so much easier and quite frankly, less stressful and more enjoyable when you have a group of colleagues all working together towards a common goal. So, so thus the name here, that advocacy is a team sport. And so, I just wanted to say that, you know, I'm not selling anything, and yes, I'm very opinionated, and none of them have to do with anyone at UT Health San Antonio. So by the end of this session here, you're going to be able to identify what is advocacy and the various different types, because there's a lot of different types, and it's important to know which specific one you're going for. I'm going to help you identify how to build that team that's going to help you, and then I'm going to help you recognize when you're done. I think what happens sometimes is people get really involved in, you know, you can't do this to me, and then people say, okay, here you go, and then they're not ready to be done yet. So so they're like, well, you can't do the other thing to me either. So I think it's really important that we know what we're going for so that we know when we're done. It's really interesting that when you identify that at the end, it really helps you to feel like the issue is resolved when it has been. All right, so let's talk about what advocacy is, right? So there's a couple different definitions here, followed by a couple different quotes. So advocacy, it's the act or process of supporting a cause or a proposal, right? You're supporting something, you're acting on behalf of something because you're working to get something. And it's also defined as an action that speaks on behalf of, in favor of. You're recommending, you're arguing for a cause, you support or defend or plead on behalf of another person. So, so there's a couple different things going on here. You can see, first of all, it's all about action. You can sit around and complain, but that's not advocacy. You can identify a problem and it's very clearly a problem, but that's not advocacy. We have to be able to take action. So what kind of action do you want to take? Well, there's a couple different kinds. But first you have to understand why you're doing what you're doing. So advocacy is empathy, compassion, and community at work. So to me, these are the values that you bring into your action, that you're bringing that compassion, you're bringing empathy, you're creating community, and you're moving forward with that advocacy. But the other side of that is that power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. So advocacy then, in and of itself, is about people who have and people who want. So if you see a situation that doesn't seem right, there's typically a power structure that needs to be navigated. And I always love new advocates because they don't see any barriers. They're just like, well, that's not right. And they fix it. They just go and they just go get stuff done. It's shocking to us old timers that have been around a while, because we see the barriers. We're like, well, you know, those folks over there at mental health, they've been doing that for a long time. And so we see the barriers because we've bumped up against them a time or two. But it's just really important to understand that when you have this advocacy issue, there are two sides to it. And so there's the compassion that you bring and the power that you're going to be bumping up against. And when I say power, I don't necessarily mean like, you know, an evil corporation or anything bad. I just mean people who have authority They have access to money typically, and they're setting the rules and the regulations and they're kind of setting not only what gets done, but how things get done. And so it's often interesting to me is when advocates get effective, power structures will change the rules about how they do things so that advocates then have yet another barrier. It happens, but it's not the end of the world. We can always work around that. So let's keep going here. Let's talk about the different types of advocacy that we have. And you'll see here in the video, the visuals, I tried to bring those forward. You've got a woman here with a sign that says, "I can't breathe." I think we all know what type of advocacy that is, or what that issue is, right? That is citizen advocacy, right? That is where citizenry sees something and they just stand up and say no. So it can be coordinated, often it is, but often it's just a wellspring of emotion about an issue that comes forward. It often catches power off guard. They don't realize that it's coming. And so it can have an initial impact that is really significant. But if you don't have the things that we're going to go through later about, planning and knowing when you're done and all that kind of stuff, it can often fizzle and lose its momentum because people don't know what they're going for. They just know that they're hopping mad. The other type of advocacy might be legislative advocacy, where you go to the place where you are having people in power and you're following the rules and this is the type of advocacy that I have never been good at because it requires a commitment. Now, some people love this. And this is really a team sport here as well. They'll find somebody that they can work with in the legislative body. They will create a bill. They'll gather their whole community to support the bill. They'll do testimony, and it won't go the first year, but they're not the least bit daunted. They come back the second year, and by the third or fourth year, by golly, they've got it done, and they've passed and made significant changes in the community. So that's what we call legislative advocacy. And then there's kind of a paid independent advocacy where you've got people who are like lobbyists are paid. I don't know how independent they are, but they're paid advocates because they're advocating on behalf of their clients. And then there's kind of what we see as social marketing, things like sunscreen saves lives, things like here we've had some issues around suicide. And so we'll have a social marketing campaign around locking up weapons and just, gun safety to avoid suicide by young people. So those are the types of different types of advocacy. There's also peer advocacy where you're advocating on behalf of a specific peer, or you're teaching that peer how to advocate for themselves, which is even more powerful. And then a case advocacy where there's just like one thing that you want to work on and you're working towards. Lots of different types of advocacy. And I think it's really important that you kind of understand what you're doing so that, so for instance, if you are trying to advocate for yourself for an issue and you're trying to put together a team, and one of your teammates says, "Hey, let's write a bill," and they're off doing legislative advocacy, and you're like, "Yeah, that's great, but that's not what I really want to do right now. First, I'd really just like to get myself or our agency kind of straightened out before we kind of try to change the entire system." So it's important to know what it is you're trying to achieve so that you can bring the right people and the right skill set onto your team. And so let's talk about building your team, right? It's so important that you don't do this alone. And so because we get advocacy, if you've never done it, and it's a really important, significant issue, it's draining, it's tiring, it's scary, it's intimidating, it's really stressful. And so so you want to make sure that when you move forward in this, that you factor in, what do I need to stay well while I'm doing this? It's really important. So you want to identify people that have the same beliefs around this issue that you do, but they have different skills and maybe they have different perspectives. For instance, I'm going to use my personal story here, right? So I come from a very strict, very conservative family. And as an adult, I kind of grew up and I made my own decisions, and I realized that I was against capital punishment. So my very strict, very conservative, very religious father also was against capital punishment. Now, I was against it for my reasons, and he was against it because he felt like you always had to keep people alive long enough for them to save their soul. They could always have a conversion, and you never wanted to take that away from them. Two very different reasons why this issue was important, but yet we could come together around that issue and talk about and maybe do some advocacy together about that issue. So you want to also have people that have different skills with them. You want to have somebody who's really good at public speaking, and maybe somebody who's really good at research, and maybe somebody else who's really good, has lots of relationships behind the scenes. And if you have allies from unlikely sources, it's really hard to ignore. So if you've got an issue and you've got somebody from the Department of Corrections and somebody from the Department of Health and somebody from Housing and somebody from the whatever department, right? And you bring all these people together and you're all working together towards a common goal, that's hard to ignore. Don't do anything that violates your values. Don't take on an issue that you are 100% willing to articulate why you're doing it and what you believe, and that you believe in the goal, because your values are going to be reflected in your strategies and in your actions, because advocacy is an action, right? So make sure that the people that you have on your team also have the same values with you. You can get really creative as an advocate, and believe me, I have. But you don't ever want to do anything that harms other people. And so you want to make really sure that the people that are on your team with you believe in that and understand that. The other thing that is really important is to look at commitment. Now, when we talk about commitment, I want you to understand that the people that are in power, they also have a commitment. They're committed to doing their jobs to the best of their ability. So what you want to look at is kind of who is the spokesperson for that department that you're going to have an impact with, that you want to have an impact on. Who's the person that you need to talk to? Because you don't want to expend energy or get side-doored or get deflected. So you want to identify ahead of time who's the person that you need to be talking to. And then, are they on a coalition? Are there coalition members there that you may want to also talk to them? What's in it for them? And what are their values? Whenever I learned early on in my business world there, and in my life and in my jobs and in everything, is that when you present a problem, you also want to present a solution. So I was with an advocacy group once, and I quickly realized that it was not something that I wanted to be involved in. They were very effective at getting the attention of the powerful people. We got into a room with these people, but what my mistake was, I hadn't done my homework to find out what these folks that I was joining wanted, and they didn't know. They just had these grandiose complaints that just kept morphing. And I realized that the values of the person that was at the table were that they really wanted to be responsive to the community, but the community that I found myself a part of wasn't interested in that. So I wound up calling the people in power and apologizing and saying, that's not the kind of advocacy that I typically do, but I am passionate about this issue and I do want to work with you on solving it, but just not with these folks. And so that was what my values had, because I recognized the values of the people on the other side. I knew them, When you've been around for a long time, you know the people in power. You might even like them, right? And so you don't want it, you're not going in there to eviscerate a person. You're going in to solve a problem. And values and relationships are going to be super important because that's what you walk in with and that's what you walk out with. Knowing all that, you want to build a plan B, a plan C, and a plan D. You want to say, okay, I know this person is really committed to being responsive to the community. I know they care about recovery. I know they care about living conditions in this prison. I know they care about retention, length of stays at the state hospital. These are issues they care about deeply. I want to work with them to solve these issues because it looks good for them. They get what they need. Maybe they save money, whatever it is, right? And so I have a plan B and C and D to get what I want and also to help them understand that we can work mutually together. But you also have to have a commitment, and your team has to have a commitment. And one of the ways you show that commitment is by creating a leadership. You got to have leadership. You got to know who's in charge, and what does that mean? Like, is by being in charge, does that mean you're the spokesperson? Does that mean you're the one who takes notes? Does that mean you're the one that interfaces with the power the people in power? What does that mean? How are you going to organize it? Get this straightened out right in the beginning, because the one thing you don't want to do is have infighting. You don't want to get into a meeting and as I did, and suddenly realize, ooh, this is not a reflection of how I do things. You want to know that in the first place. And what is it, chances are you're going to lose, right? So what is it that you're willing to lose? And if you do get a no, thank you, there's just no way we can do that. Well, then what, right? That's your plan B, D, C, right? That's what that is. And then the other thing I really want, as I said earlier, is to understand when you're done. What exactly is it that you want? We want to reduce length of stay at the state hospital by 3 months. Great, that's a fantastic plan. We want to be able to have peer supporters as an option for every person who enrolls in services in our organization. That's really powerful. We want to be able to we want to be able to have conversations with the leadership about peer support, because they don't understand what peer support is, and they're asking us to do things like pass out medicine and chart about symptoms. And those are not things that peer supporters do, because peer supporters are non-clinical. So clearly there are things here that we need you to understand what peer support is, and we want you to make changes. Right? That's very clear. That's really right. And then, why do you want this? Is it because, how dare you? Right? I found myself getting really in a big fight because somebody lied to me. Just lie to me once and see what happens. One of my friends says to me, "Don't they know you?" I was like, clearly they don't. So, I mean, I just got my dander up, and they lied to a whole row of us, right? There was a whole people, they lied to the whole room. And so the whole room organized and had an impact, right? And so but that may not have been my best motivation, right? The issue at hand was an important issue. That was also very true. So we need to use our personal experiences as motivation and as influence. So here's what happened to me when I wasn't able to get real peer support. I thought I was getting a peer supporter, and what I got was just a case aide or somebody who really wasn't able to talk to me about their experiences, because they said it was crossing a boundary, and that's not what I thought peer support was. And so I really I didn't get well. It took me a long time until I was able to connect with real peer support, who showed me their story and told me and showed me how there are some things that they learned and helped me, taught me, and walked with me. Oh, well, that's a really powerful experience, right? And so, especially when something's new, people don't often know what to do with it, right? They think they're doing the right thing. And so when we can use our personal experience to influence, I mean, that's what peers do, right? That's what we do, is we help others through our own stories. Commitment waxes and wanes. Don't expect everybody to be as committed as you, and it's okay to take a break. I want you to understand that. That's the other thing that's really good about having a team, is that you can just say, listen, I have got to step back. And I remember people coming to me one time and going, Mary, we really need you at this meeting. And at that point in time, I had realized that it wasn't good for me. And I just said, I can't do this and stay well. And they never asked again, because my peers understood. And so they might have come to me and asked for some advice about how to move forward, but they took it and ran with it because they knew that, like, me staying well was more important than whatever that issue was. We have to take a commitment to ourselves, a commitment to the issue, and a commitment to each other. So these are some things that you just some tips, and I really liked this format of a slide. So just some tips for you as you move forward. We talked about commitment and really clear, measurable goals. And I love SMART goals, right? They're very specific and they're very measurable. So, if we want to have 5 new peer supporters in our organization this year, did we make our goal, right? We got 3. Well, that's not bad. And so we have clear, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and they're time sensitive. So we know a time sensitive. We make adjustments or repairs as needed to the conversation. It might just be a short little advocacy conversation. It might be a whole campaign. Make sure you have timelines for yourself, and never leave one meeting without scheduling another. Have timelines, because delay can often be a tactic used by the people with the power that's a strategy for them to not have to deal with the issue that is real, but it's going to be really expensive to fix. Create a specific plan, especially if you've got media. Get your hashtags lined up, and really understand what your objective is. So, and you want to be kind in all of your outreach and all of your public stuff. You never want to be humiliating or mean or vengeful or spiteful in any of the things that you do publicly. That's going to come back on you, because we go in with relationships, we come out with relationships. Make sure that everybody knows their role and understand the cost to you personally, the cost financially, yours and theirs. So if you know that you're asking somebody to do something, understand what it's going to cost them. And again, perhaps you might be able to help them. So for instance, we can't afford peer supporters. Well, did you know that they're Medicaid reimbursable? Wait, they are? Yes. Let's get this in your state plan. We'll work with you so that you can bill for peer support or whatever the issue is. As I said, when you come in with the problem, come in with a couple solutions that may or may not be workable, but at least then people on the other side understand that you are trying to understand their perspective. All right. Work backwards. All right. Start at the end. Break your plan into stages, unless it's just a little, I got to have a conversation with this person, which I think is really important. Just, I'm going to have a conversation with this person and achieve what I need right here. So break your plan into stages. You've got to have some research to see what's the truth. There's lots of, oh my God, my cousin was in the hospital for 3 years and she tried to get out and couldn't get out. Okay, but let's do some research and see what hospital length of stays really are, and why. Why are they so long? What are the reasons? Do some outreach and engagement around people that might want to join in this, or people that could give you some information, and then do an assessment. Is this real? Is this true? Understand the end goal at each one of these stages. What are we trying to achieve in our research? What are we trying to achieve in our outreach? What are we trying to achieve in each of these stages? Recommit, reconvene. It's just, right? You're going to always be looking. Every time you leave a meeting, you're going to meet with your team. You're going to discuss how it went. You're going to evaluate. You're going to be doing things. You're going to be planning on responses, right? this is for big campaigns, but for individual people, you can just have a conversation with somebody, and then we can do what we call bookending, where you've got somebody before you go into a meeting. You're going to have a difficult conversation with somebody. You're sticking up for yourself, or you're teaching your peer to do it. You have a conversation beforehand. You go in, you have the difficult conversation, you come out, and then you talk to your support person. So you're bookending. You're still doing research, outreach, engagement, and assessment. You're still doing all those things. It's just for you to be successful for yourself, because you deserve the best. Understanding what you want. And then if you don't get it, think about, well, what do I need to do? Do I need to recommit, or am I willing to live with this? Do I understand what they're telling me? And then just rinse and repeat. What I think is really important for you to do is to celebrate your successes, to be able to say to yourself, I did really well. Even if you don't get what you want, I learned how to do research. I learned how to take information and really kind of talk to other people about that and do some outreach and get some allies. I learned how to stick up for myself. I've never been able to stick up for myself, and now I can. I mean, these are huge things as we come forward together, because as people in recovery, we lived lives that we were not maybe in the most powerful position ourselves. What maybe we were on disability, got that crushing news that you're disabled, and we get that, that's just a defeated purpose to addiction. It defeats us, it isolates us. Addiction and mental illness can be really devastating to our self-esteem, to our spiritual sense of who we are. And so when we're able to reclaim some of that, it's worth celebrating, regardless of the outcome. If we that's the win, right? Is when we reclaim our own power and our own sense of self. That's the win. So celebrate, and that is it for me. I have absolutely no idea what time it is. I don't know if I've gone 20 minutes or over. But again, I just really want to say thank you for having me. This is one of my favorite subjects, and I'm looking forward to conversations.
Thank you so much, Mary. Lots of great information. Are there any questions from the Learning Network?
I'll ask a question.
So,
Howdy, I'm in the middle of packing to move, so I apologize. Also, happy holidays. I love you. You are incredible. What an amazing presentation. When I was listening to your intro, I was like, oh, this woman like gets me. Like, that is one of the benefits of being in leadership in this space is I'm in a safe space, right? So my bosses know that I am a powerhouse of change because of the stuff I went through, right? And having to dig myself out of it. And I also have the space to say what you said, hey, this XYZ just happened and I need to take time for myself, or I need to cut back on work, or whatever it is. I love that. Yeah. I want to provide that for others, and you hit it on the head where, and I remember coming back into life, not feeling like I had a voice to stick up for myself at work, and I just had to deal with whatever was getting to me. I don't want that for my team. So can you tell me, how do I promote that? And I know that's a conversation that starts happening ahead of time and it has to be reinforced, but how do I structure that in my own organization? And thank you.
You might ask your team, what do they need to feel heard? And then, hear it from them, rather than, just talking to your team, what is it that makes you feel unheard, and what do you need to feel heard, and then how can I support that for you? So now I'm thinking of you running a team within a larger organization. Is that kind of what you're thinking about? Yeah. So then just be like, what are some issues, and how can I support you on those? And yeah.
Would you say, like, is that a because I have a team meeting daily with my program manager, but then I can encourage conversation on a more regular basis with anybody and say it in a suggestible way. do you feel like that's more of a one-on-one conversation, or do you feel like that is a group conversation? Just, that you're here because you are special. Everything that tarnished you has made you brilliant for this. And, I want you to feel safe and be able to share what's going on.
I think that comes with how we treat each other. I
Okay.
think that as a leader, you're an advocate for your own team, and you treat them the way they want, like you recognize them, and I say this in a non-religious way. You're recognizing the divinity within them, right? You recognize that awesomeness, that uniqueness of who they are within them. And when they feel that, that's when they begin to get restored and healed in some of those ways in which sometimes we get diminished.
Mhm.
So if you're leading your team and you're treating them in a quality way, and you're protecting them from being treated any other way, I think that's a really powerful way to create a safe environment.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you. Let's move on to a few announcements before we get into the case. Karen, could you please share the announcement slides? All right, thank you. The Center for Substance Use Training and Telementoring provides high-quality education and best practices for responding to substance use. CSTAT can help enhance professionals' knowledge and self-efficacy to screen, treat, and make referrals for people with substance use disorders. To learn more, please visit us at cstat.utesca.edu. Next slide. Do you have a difficult case that you or your team have encountered? CSTAT offers you the opportunity to present any challenge your organization is encountering and receive feedback from our hub of experts and broader learning community. There's no need to prepare a formal presentation. We will provide a case form to fill out to assist with your case presentation. If you're interested in presenting a case, please email us at cstat@utesca.edu. Next slide. And reminder that December's recovery support services echo session has been canceled. However, you can join us for our harm reduction, public safety, and Texas RX echo session in December. To register, please visit our website at cstat.utesca.edu. Next slide. And join Beeville, Texas for a virtual informational session December 11th, 2023 at 3 p.m. And to register, you can scan the QR code provided or also register with the link provided in the chat. And next slide. In Texas, TXSUS 2024 is officially open to sponsors and exhibitors. Texas Substance Use Symposium will be taking place on February 29th to March 1st next year in Austin, Texas. If you're interested in learning more on how to become a sponsor or exhibitor, please visit our website at texas.org, sponsor tech TXSUS, and thank you. And let's move on to our case presentation for today. I'm Cole. When Karen shares the form, if you can please take, yeah, perfect. And please walk us through the case.
Hey, what's up, everybody? So, a little background about Stages. So this particular case study is coming from the housing perspective in particular, not so much, although we do have a clinical or treatment response available as a company. Technically, this is merely just a housing kind of case study that we've worked on, that we happened to us recently. So we would coordinate if we did think that we needed any clinical interventions, we would coordinate that separately. So just to kind of put you in the frame of reference for where you would be working in this, right? Or how to approach it. So we have a client, female, 35, Caucasian, non-Hispanic. About the only cultural consideration that I could see was that there was some wealth or affluence there, and so there wasn't as much responsibility. She wasn't expected to have as much responsibility for her daily living and life skills, things like that. So the situation, client admitted into our housing program early July of 2023. Her goals at the time were to finish treatment and have a true relationship with her family. Her pre-admission date of last use was 5/29. She completed residential treatment prior, and she went door to door from some, I don't remember, some residential treatment company. Her drug of choice was alcohol. Daily consumption was about 3 or 4 bottles of wine. Client tested positive for cocaine on 11/12 on a point of care urinalysis test. She denied use at that time. We sent the collection off to the lab. It confirmed the substance of cocaine, or benzoyl go9, or whatever you call it. I don't know how to pronounce it. So, it confirmed that there was there. She denied use again and actually at that point accused staff of tampering with her specimen or the results somehow. Just to point out, there have been no widely recognized or scientifically verified substances to cause false positives for cocaine, for what it's worth. So obstacles in this particular situation, she began a friendship with a male from their shared outpatient treatment program. That's so they didn't meet in housing because our housing is gender specific. The relationship turned romantic, as many times it does. I think I'm telling a tale that's been told many times before. The male client returned to using alcohol and cocaine, discontinued treatment, and moved out of his housing program. Our female client, the one we're referring to, continues to go and visit the male. He moved out. I don't know when he moved out, but probably a couple months prior to all of this happening, I would assume. He returned to using. She continues to go visit the male because we allow our clients to have autonomy, and even if we did shut that down, it wouldn't change the behavior anyway. A variety of staff, including her individual therapist, process the behavior with her. She consistently states she is aware of the danger. Client does not have a sponsor because the last one was friends with her house manager and has been actively looking for the last couple of months. So some interesting things we track, clinically speaking, we track some things, and so those transfer over to housing a lot of times. And so we were able to track quite a few things, and she's had really good recovery capital over the last few months, and we hadn't even seen it dwindling even as the relationship progressed, right? A lot of times we would see when a relationship like this is progressing and more thoughts of returning to use kind of creep in, that a lot of times these resiliency factors will start to dwindle down. But in her case, they didn't. They stayed pretty consistent. She was really committed to sobriety. She was really optimistic, had really high quality of life scores for the last 2 months. And then not only that, but she had reported minimal to no visual or verbal cravings. There was a little spike in the previous week, but it wasn't enough to cause much concern for us. And when I mean a little spike, I mean like on a range from 0 to 100. This is like converted for ratio. A range from 0 to 100. She spiked from 0 to 12. So a little bit of a spike, but somebody at her stage, it's kind of normal. She's got a really excellent support network, and really her family is really been involved through the process and has done a really good job with boundary setting and some of the stuff that we see families traditionally struggle with or find challenging in the recovery process on their side of things. They've actually done a really good job at kind of taking that on. So they've been really supportive and had really good boundaries with her. She kind of roped them in a little bit with the tampering thing and got them on board for a little bit until we kind of described the science to them. And then they back off again. Options. So we've got, we received the results on a Friday evening after hours. We have a strict policy at housing to treat clients who return to use more like a doctor's office would, unless doing so would endanger the safety of the other clients in the housing. She was not under the influence Friday night. Everything was fine. And we wanted to make sure they were talking about it as a team. And so we just told her, hey, everything's all right. You're not going anywhere this weekend. There's nothing to worry about. I mean, it's hard. I know it's hard not to worry about it, but just do the best you can. Hang with us. We're going to take care of you through the weekend. Let's talk about it on Monday morning. Client was anyway, so we also had a bunch of major restrictions. If she wanted to stay, like we took away her phone and her car keys. I think she could continue to go to work with both of those items, but in between she didn't. And we needed to have a conversation with her at 10 a.m. on Monday morning as a team. And then at that point, our options include loss of privileges at housing, increased outpatient level of care. There were some others that I put, referral to residential treatment. And then there was even another one that we had thought of, but I'm going to see if anybody else thinks of it. So anyway, that's pretty much it, the situation. And how should we proceed from a housing program in this particular situation? Client continues to deny use. Oh, here's some questions. Questions. How should treatment providers approach such discrepancies between self-assessment scores? So one of the things that was neat was that we saw her recovery capital stay high and we saw her pathology stay low throughout this whole period of time. And she was it was a self-assessment. So was there not truthfulness there? Was she lying to herself? Was there something wrong with the self-assessment in and of itself? That one's mostly unlikely because they're all it's like the GAD and Penn Worry questionnaire and things like that. So they're pretty reliable tests. But how should we, as treatment providers, kind of approach these discrepancies between behavior and self-assess things? And are there any strategies? Are there any ways that we can address denial in clients? Or if we do see a spike, like is a spike of visual cravings from 0 to 12 sufficient enough to draw an intervention from the team, right? Maybe it should, maybe it shouldn't. So that's one of the questions. I don't know if we stop and answer that question first, or if I should go to both of them and y'all just kind of throw me some answers, whatever y'all feel like working on. But this one is kind of the one that we all probably struggle with from time to time as recovery support service providers and clinicians and every person across the gamut of treatment is, given the client's positive drug test or ongoing relationship with the individual who has relapsed, how can treatment programs balance the importance of client autonomy with the need to maintain a safe and supportive recovery environment? Should there be a reassessment of policies regarding client relationships and interactions outside the program, and especially in cases where those relationships may pose a risk to recovery?
Thank you so much, Cole.
Thank you.
Any questions from the help team or the learning? And I see them.
Or
Yeah,
suggestions.
Yeah, hi, Cole. Thanks so much for presenting this. You know, it's interesting. This comes from a very strong clinical perspective, right? You know, and I think I can see just knowing you are clinical, right? And so it makes sense. I think it's interesting because this really in recovery support and the principles that we have, there's some different dynamics that are happening here. I think it's interesting to look at. And one of the questions I think you had was the recovery capital remained high, right? But the pathology or some of the other pieces of that puzzle looked like they were given a different picture. And I think that there are times where I think the individual themselves, especially if they have strong recovery capital, they have other processes in place. I think that can really help support their journey in recovery. So I don't know. I don't think the assessment was wrong. I think that what we were seeing is that you know, that this person had a commitment to their recovery journey. And that recovery journey may not be exactly what, you know, what we're looking at, right? So as many pathways of recovery, this may not be the model that's good for her. But yeah, I just thought that was interesting, and I'm just curious to hear how others are coming from, because I'm sure a lot of that perspective is going to be from recovery supports, from peer support perspective, and a little different than the clinical or treatment side. But, let's see what everyone else has to say. But no, thank you so much. Yeah.
Anyone wants to jump in? Any questions for Cole? Any feedback, experiences?
Anybody have any really great ideas for how to navigate that? Because I'll take them, that's for sure. what do you do when clients get in a relationship with each other and you know that it's not? I mean, and I think there's many pathways. Like, I am married to the woman I started dating at 60 days sober, and we've been married for 15 years. So I'm a firm believer that there are many ways that you can get about this pathway, right? But what should our response be, right? How should we handle it?
Jordan, I see your hand.
Yeah, I was just gonna, ask if she has any support, specifically peer support, that is outside of the current program she's in, that's not directly connected to it.
Not that I'm aware of.
So I mean, a possibility to explore. Peer support is, always great across the board, but giving her a support person that has no affiliation with the program could really be a good next step for her. And I think one of the questions that, I would pose, to her during that staff meeting is, what are her goals? So if she's adamant that she did not have a return to use, regardless of what results from the lab say, going back and forth on that, it's pointless, isn't going to get anywhere. So looking at that as, okay, like it's done and over with. Where do we go from here? What do you want? Because like you said, you can, ban her from having contact with this individual, but we also know how that goes. And if this is a relationship that's going to continue, why not explore how to support her in having a healthy relationship while she's in a structured environment?
Yeah, that's great. That's
Oh.
fantastic.
This is Slade. How's everybody doing? In cases that stuff like this comes up in our house, as far as any false positives, we always will listen to what somebody says and give an opportunity for them to get a levels test, something that they're going to end up paying for and come back with, especially if they want to, acknowledge the fact that it is going to be their responsibility. They do need to be accountable. And as far as relationships go, just like any other kind of behavioral issues that are happening in our house, we want to address them with care and try to have a plan around that. And when it comes to relationships, maybe there's a behavior contract you need. How's it affecting the house as a whole? All of those things. I just would add that.
I see a comment from Pastor Deb. Would you like to unmute and?
Thank you, my dear. And I was just going to add that so much goes into the emotion when somebody has to start their recovery process after they detox. Everybody's so different, but we really do have better success separating. We work with Santa Maria, they're for the ladies and children, and we work with the Wheelhouse, keeping those boundaries at first, because there's so much ego and emotion that goes into a new relationship, that's so much pressure. It's, y'all know this, but I was just going to say that I think it's case by case, and getting to know that rapport with that one client and holding them accountable. I mean, this is their recovery. It's not going to come all in one day. It's a long road. And so if you're on the road going somewhere on the highway, you're looking for signs, you're looking for maps and signals, hold them to that account, because this is their journey, but they're the conductor.
And Neil, are you able to unmute and let us know if you read in the chat? Or if not, so she something that she learned was that she used relationships to take the place of friendships. So how involved is she with people outside of her family and outside of the treatment program?
I don't think she's very involved with any of it, despite efforts to get her to do so. She's pretty entrenched in I mean, I think part of motivation is a big part of it too, you know. Everybody's in this situation, motivation. So yeah, she's kind of just rolling with what's coming at her as opposed to being very goal oriented or directive, right? About what it is she wants. So she's just kind of taking the relationships that are around in her sphere of influence already.
I think it says a lot about where she's at, the fact that she went through this, relationship and it didn't work out the way that she thought, and she didn't turn around and start using again or have any slips behind it. For me out here in Angleton, I've actually met with peers, at meetings and taken them to meetings just until they felt comfortable enough to go on their own. But the biggest part of that was because the anxiety is so high in the beginning, right? And then especially when people want you to stay and chit chat afterwards, like actually develop the friendships. And so just going that first few times to actual outside social engagements has really been beneficial. And I feel like I kind of related, listening to the case study, it really says a lot that she's reaching out. She developed, this relationship that could be deemed inappropriate, but she stayed clean and sober through it, right? So I feel like she's really saying that she wants some connection, and it would be good if the connection, was healthy, right? But so that's partly our job. Like part of our job is, helping them figure out how to do that.
I think one of the things this case brings up for me is just it's a great reminder of the beauty that we have in this paradigm of multiple pathways and self-determination, like all these peer-based values, and the flexibility that provides for people on their autonomous journeys, right? And so even though I start one path and maybe this is a good trajectory, and a certain amount of structure or lack of structure or whatever it is, where they're at, like this is what's working for me now, but that doesn't mean it has to be the only thing that continues to work for me. So at any point, if I want to take the off ramp and pursue this other thing, whether it's a different type of treatment or a different type of meeting or counseling, or maybe I don't want to do any of those things anymore and I just want to do something that's more of a holistic thing or something that's more based on fitness, like people have the right and the ability and the flexibility to just do that. And the beauty about peer support and being in those peer coaching roles is to be able to say, that's fantastic and I support you and let's do that. And to not only advocate for them in those settings if needed, but to also help them, learn those kind of self-advocacy skills for themselves, right? To be able to say, yeah, that actually is what I want. And so this is the path I'm going to take. And I have these people in my corner, this tribe of peer support that will help me pursue whatever that is, even if it seems like it's coming at a kind of a incongruent juncture, I guess, or a less than can't think of the word. It's just kind of out of the norm, right? Out of the box. So much of peer support happens out of the box, and it's in those kind of very non-traditional type pursuits. And so I love what it sounds like this lady has, inside of her with this self-determination and kind of doing things her way and making choices that maybe not everybody would agree with. But from a peer's perspective, that's like fantastic. And how can we help support you in that? And if there are boundaries to be set, well, what does that mean to you? And what does that mean not only from the clinical side, the peer side, the family side, the relationship side? Like, how do you want that to look? And let's just work on that. So, yeah, it just kind of brought that to mind, just the beauty of that flexibility that we get to work with, right, in doing peer support. So thanks for your presentation.
Thank you. In the interest of time, I'd like to move on to recommendations. Joseph, could you please give us a summary of recommendations?
Yes, absolutely. I don't know about you all, but time flew by really quickly. Mary, thank you so much for your presentation around advocacy, not only covering, the basics, but all the different types of advocacy, and it leads in and really supports what we do in peer recovery support services, not only advocating with and for those that we support but also for the movement and, quite honestly, for the work that we do. And from a national perspective, we have a lot of work to do in advocating for our seat at the table and our piece of the pie, so to speak. And those are some excellent tips and tricks, and I bet you can go on for hours about advocacy. So your passion came through. Greatly appreciate that, and that really ties into what we're hearing and what we're seeing about our case study, our situation here. And really, when we are working alongside a participant receiving services and we're providing peer recovery support services, it is really working with and alongside the individual. From a clinical standpoint, everybody's going to have their motives and goals and their outcomes, and they got to measure that. But when all said and done, we're here to support the individual from a recovery standpoint and what recovery looks like and means to them. For my own self, I know my family had their perspective from a clinical aspect. I know they had theirs. And, thinking about how, from our position and the work that we do, how we can help to meet the person where they're at. Doesn't matter what the urinalysis says or the drug testing says. If they are saying that they are, they haven't used, okay. And like it was mentioned earlier, meet them there. Where do we go from here? How can we support you in your recovery? If you want to be in a relationship, okay, what does that look like? And how does that support your recovery? SAMHSA identifies these dimensions of health, home, purpose, and community. If we're not focusing on those areas, then we're always going to lean back on and default to that lizard brain and automatically go to a unhealthy coping mechanism. That may be substance use, that may be toxic relationships, that may be overworking, that may be overeating. 'Tis the season for overeating. So if you're in a pathway of recovery yourself, always practice that self-care. But this is an opportunity to look at all those different areas and say, how does this relationship support your recovery? What do you want your recovery to look like? What do you want to get out of this situation? And as peers, that's what we find out, meet them where they're at, and support them along their way. Because if they feel confident in their decisions, if they feel supported, then they'll feel supported in making those healthy decisions, in setting boundaries. Some people have to make their own mistakes. Some people have to be able to set their own boundaries instead of boundaries being enforced on them. And it sounds like they're in a situation where everybody is coming out at them with their own objectives and motives and outcomes of what they want to see. But really, when it all boils down, whose recovery is it? Faces and Voices, we did a patient-centered outcomes research. I'm going to drop some links in there, looking at what people that are receiving services, what they are identifying as most important as outcomes that should come from receiving services. And the top thing that they identified is staying alive. Not abstinence, but staying alive. On a way of advocacy and writing that wave, I'm going to also drop in a 2-page little sheet that goes along with that research that talks about how we can advocate in our conversations with clinicians and treatment providers around how to best look at and approach getting outcomes kind of re-steered and not just focused on the abstinence at 30, 60, 90 days, but looking at what that patient, what that person receiving services, what that participant really wants out of life. So excellent. Happy holidays. I'm gonna drop some links into chat here. And just a reminder about the survey, or the evaluation, I should say, at the end. And I'm pretty sure that the link will be dropped in there as well. So you're gonna get a plethora of links shot at you. I see some familiar faces. It's always great to see some folks from El Paso. Hello, Rosa. And
What's up, Joseph?
yep.
Just saying hi from El Paso. That's all
Oh,
we're doing.
How are you? I am
doing good. Thank you guys. As always, I enjoyed the presentation. As always, it's always good to help others that are going through different the hardships or whatever they're going through, and as peers to come together and help each other out as much as we can. That's what that's what our purpose is, to help each other out, to help who we can, and continue with our purpose in recovery.
Absolutely, Jose. Thank you. Each one teach one. I'm also dropping 2 other resources for the Opioid Response Network and the Peer Recovery Center of Excellence for additional training and technical assistance that can be additional support on top of this, and really builds out and continues the conversation around peer recovery support services. Thank you all, and happy Friendsgiving, my friends, and thank you.
Thank you, Joseph, and to everybody. And as Joseph mentioned, please complete the post-session survey using the link in the chat to earn the continuing education credits. And quick reminder that our next RSS Echo session will be in January, not December. Have a great rest of the day, and also great long weekend.